afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming today. The purpose of this press conference is to talk about kind of give a recap on 2015. We've received a lot of inquiries, of course, about how did we do as we round out the year. 2015 started off with on the heels of a 2014 that saw near record homicide rates here in the city of Pittsburgh. So we're eager to talk about, kind of provide some context and perspective on where we are, how we did, and our plans for the future. You know, in summation, you know, just I'll kind of give you the overall. 2015, our homicide rate was down about 21% over 2014, which is just fractionally over, about 8% over the 5-year average. So we're hovering in the vicinity of our 5-year average for homicides. While that's progress over the preceding year, it's not something I'm happy about. It's not something that we're celebrating any type of victory, but rather it's helpful to in terms of providing a sense of context, both with where we were last year and what's happening nationally. One of the things, and I'll show you a graphic here that will be on the screens, and we'll make these available to you online here later. Nationally, cities our size and larger have been seeing large to record increases in their homicide rates. And so again, while a 21% decrease in homicides over last year is nothing to celebrate, it's simply a little bit of progress. It does illustrate for us that there's some things that are happening in some of these other cities that aren't happening here in Pittsburgh. All right, so here you can see some comparables, both from 2010 through 14, and then the earlier 5-year period as well, to provide some context for you. On the other hand, the bad news is shootings are up within the city. So while our homicide rates are down, our non-fatal shootings are up. Our 911 calls for service shootings are up as well. And so while there's some progress, there's still a lot that we need and want to work on to be responsive. Similarly, aggravated assaults with a gun were up from 2014 about 23%. Okay, so there's a lot of violence. There is a problem, and a lot of the things we've been putting in place over this year, we're going to need to double down on it in the coming year in order to get a handle on this violence. So again, we've seen some reductions, but it's by no means time for celebration. Now, you'll recall from earlier in the year I talked about changing in alignments within the police bureau to improve our capacity to respond. So during the course of this year, one of the things we did is ensure that our homicide investigators, our major crime investigators, are working more collaboratively with the officers who work in the zones, who know the players, who live in the neighborhoods, who talk to them every single day. Make sure that our intelligence unit is working with and is more responsive with our homicide investigators, and providing data to our patrol officers working in the area. We've enhanced our analytic capacity, providing tools, providing crime maps and intelligence information to our officers to improve their ability both to respond as first responding officers, but also to work collaboratively with our violence crime reduction officers and detectives. We made a number of realignments to our major crimes unit to talk about how we could improve the way that we investigate these crimes as they occur. And here in a moment, I'm going to invite up Commander Larry Scarrato to talk about some of those changes. I'm very excited about some of the progress that has been made. Commander Scarrato is going to talk to you about clearance rates and the way we've got some data that suggests the realignment that we put in place is starting to make a little bit of a difference for us. Now, in the coming year, we intend to continue to move forward with a collaborative response plan for dealing with violent crime. We'll be working very, very closely with the District Attorney's Office, with our state, local, and federal law enforcement partners. We're going to continue our partnership with John Jay College and the other subject matter experts on group violence intervention. And we'll be working more systematically to improve our capacity to partner with the community, to identify who are those small percentage of individuals within the community who are really driving the violent crime. So there's a lot. We've just barely begun to scratch the surface with some of the improvements we intend to put in place. We intend to do a lot more, and we're going to continue to stay focused on this as the #1 overarching goal for Pittsburgh Bureau of Police again in 2016 will be to reduce violent crime and its related disorder. So with that, I'd like to invite up Commander Larry Descarado to talk in a little bit more detail about what the homicides looked like here in 2015.
We saw, obviously as the chief spoke, a marked decrease in homicides, yet we still saw an increase in aggravated assault on fatal shootings. Our office, if you recall, we started this press conference in June. We did one in September, and it was all relative to reorganization and what we intended to do as far as an investigative branch to combat and deter some of this crime. And then, more importantly, what we intended to do to hold those accountable committing this violent crime. So we consolidated in September 1st of 2015, and during that consolidation, we combined our robbery unit and our homicide unit to create what we call violent crime. And in that violent crime unit, we had 24 detectives that solely focused on murder, and then we had another 6 detectives that focused on aggravated assault on fatal shootings. Now, when you talk about reduction in crime, it's all encompassing, and we spoke to how we need our investigative capacity to increase, how we needed community involvement, and to start creating those levels of trust within our community so our citizens would start coming forward. Well, what we've seen is from that point forward, we have investigated from the September 1st date, we have investigated 24 murders. We have cleared 15 of those homicides, which puts us at about 62.5%. Comparatively speaking to a 48% clearance rate that we had seen in the past. If any organization or any unit is judged, we're talking about double-digit increases relative to solving homicide. How do we prevent homicide? Remove the anonymity of the offender. How do you remove the anonymity of the offender? Hold them accountable for their actions. By increasing our clearance rate or by increasing our participation for our communities, the violent crime response in our communities with operations and patrol, the capacity, increased capacity in our investigative units, we're starting to see that we're getting much more public input following these crimes. We're getting much more information from witnesses following these crimes, and that's starting to build that level of trust. And it's putting those criminals on notice, those individuals involved in violent behavior, that in fact, this isn't tolerable, this isn't acceptable, and you won't remain anonymous. Our citizens are coming forward, and they're providing information that in turn makes their neighborhoods much safer. The reality is we know we needed to foster that relationship. We needed to develop a better interaction in our communities with our investigators. And if we do that, that we would see some real change. And I believe that real change is occurring. We will see, hopefully, these relationships foster and continue to grow, that when there is a violent crime, there is a murder in our community, and I can even speak to the one that happened at the beginning of this year that we have already solved, that the community came forward almost instantaneously and provided information relative to the whereabouts, the flight, where the actors were hiding. And that's information that we, in the past, may not have been privileged to get because people weren't very comfortable talking to the police. In these instances, I believe our clearances are relevant to that continued development of relationships and partnerships with our community. Not to mention, I feel I have some of the most skilled investigators nationally. I have some of the best, hands down. And when they are given the resources and support from our command staff, they excel as well. So those collective parts and components are why we are able to tout an almost 20% increase in solving homicides. And we look at our efforts in the past, believe me, they weren't dismal. 2015, we had an 88% conviction rate on murder. 88% is a significant number. It's well above the national average. It shows that the cases that we do solve, that we're bringing thoroughly investigated, complete cases to end and prosecution. And that also goes into the manner of how we hold those people involved in violent crime accountable for their actions. You know, we're willing to solve these cases, and while we're solving these cases, we're not just going to put a number together to get it out of our office. We're going to put it in front of the district attorney and their cooperation and their level of participation in these investigations and hold these people accountable. And if we continue to hold those responsible, those small, again, talking about 6% of the people in our communities, if we as a collective hold them responsible for their violent actions, and we show as a police organization, we're willing to hold them responsible. And we show as a community, we're willing to hold them responsible. They can't hide. There will be no anonymity in our communities. And therefore, when those violent acts occur, we'll be able to put them in prison for the crimes that they commit. All right, thank you.
No, thank you, Commander. No, our commitment continues to be to using research-based best practices, to working really closely with all of our state, local, federal partners, and as you heard the Commander say, most importantly, working with and developing the relationship with those communities that we serve, so that we have the trust necessary for them to want to reach out to us to work with us. So I'm confident in the year going forward. We have our challenges against us, but again, as you look at what we have going here in Pittsburgh, there's something happening here that's going well, that's not going well in some of the other cities our size. I don't know what it is. If I could find some wood. If it was real, I would knock on it, but the reality is there's some things that are going well here. So I'll end my formal comments at this point. I'd like to turn it over to Mayor Peduto for some closing comments, and then we'll all be available to answer questions you might have.
So in 2014, we hired a new police chief. And by the end of the year, we had a new command staff. In 2015, they began to put together the changes to how we investigate violent crime. And those changes came from the rank and file through the command staff to find the best practices that would work in Pittsburgh. We adapted and adopted two models of policing. One, a community-based model, which is based on not finding the one bad guy, but the 99 good guys within each community. And two, data analytics, in order to give our detectives the resources they need by combining it with information to be able to break up networks and to find commonality to be able to solve crime. And in 2015, unlike almost every other city our size, we saw a reduction in the number of homicides. This is a testament to the command staff that has been assembled and to the men and women of the Pittsburgh Bureau of Police who have taken on these reforms as a part of building the best police bureau in the country. This is something that all Pittsburghers should take pride in, but our work is far from finished. It's only actually at the beginning. With a new public safety director who is committed to furthering our operations to build out community partnerships, and with a commitment coming from this administration to see the resources that will be applied, not only in that endeavor, but helping the police bureau to modernize its information systems, we should see further reductions in the years to come. I'd like to thank the chief, the command staff, and the men and women of the Pittsburgh Bureau of Police. Good work.
We'll be happy to entertain any questions you might have. Please, sir.
Can you talk about the latter part of last year? We saw a number of shootings involving victims that were very young in age. We're talking about 3-year-old boy, Rodnell Lyman, who shot in the face attending a vigil in Homewood.
Yes.
David McIntyre, a little bit older, who was shot and killed inside his home. Can you discuss what the Bureau's plan is moving forward for those particular cases, and in particular just getting young children out of that type of crime?
And what you see me looking for is some notes I have with respect to age. I've got a more, here we go. There was Violent crime is impacting on young people, and it's not just impacting on young people who are engaged in the criminal lifestyle, it's completely innocent bystanders. And this is why it is such a such a priority for everyone within the community. We do see a modest uptick in the age of homicides in 2015 over previous years. So the average homicide age for victims from 2010 through 2014 was 31 years of age, where the average in 2015 was 26. So we do have some of these very, very young victims as curve breakers, if you will. So we do see a trend beginning to emerge. We don't know if this is a long-term trend or a statistical anomaly because of some curve breakers. We're going to be watching this extremely carefully. So the fact that it is impacting on innocent young people, completely unassociated to the violent lifestyle, I think may be one of those unifying variables that will help us bring the community members, the police officers work in the neighborhood, and my detectives all together, because we all agree this is completely unacceptable. So yes, it's something we're going to be monitoring very, very carefully. Please, sir.
Can you talk about the disparate impact based on race of victims?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. There were no significant change. I will post up more data on the website relative to race. The statistics and the distribution looks about the same. Almost identical, as a matter of fact. Over 80% of our homicide victims are black. Over 80%, and the vast majority of them are, of course, male. And the vast majority of them are young, between 14 and 27, 28 years of age. This is a trend that's been going on for a number of years here. The race of our actors or suspects, when known, is a similar demographic. And so as you look at the neighborhoods that are being adversely impacted, we have a disparate impact on victimization. Okay, everyone in Pittsburgh enjoys the same quality of life, and there's a victimology happening here that's completely unacceptable. And so one of the things that I do see going well here is a recognition that we, the African American community working with police, have to work together, because this is really about a disparate impact that's harming one portion of our community alone.
Chief,
yes.
Looking at these numbers for gun shootings, aggravated assaults, and shots fired, the numbers between last year and this year don't seem, from the layman's point of view, don't seem to be modest increases, they seem to be spikes. Is there anything that might indicate why we've seen such an increase in gun violence?
I don't know. One would think logically that there would be a correlation between your homicide rates and your shooting rates, but these two variables seem to be varying on an independent axis, and we don't quite understand this. So one of the things that we hope to get out of strong data analytics and strong partnerships with our academic community, start to get our head around. So if correlations between shootings, if shootings aren't the thing that's going to tell you what your homicide rate's going to look like, what does that look like? You know, what is that variable that's driving this? So we're going to continue. We're building our analytic capacity. We've hired a crime analysis manager, a supervisor, 2 civilian crime analysts to supplement the analytics we already have. We partner with Allegheny County Human Services, and they're assisting with some of our analytics as well, because we're trying to get our head around this phenomenon. Why is this happening? And so it'd be irresponsible for me to speculate, but it's one of those things that it would certainly be interesting to discover what is the connecting variable that's causing these things to occur. Please.
2 quick questions. In regards to the clearance rates for violent and property crimes, can you just say whether they're up or down?
I don't have that information, so it'd be irresponsible for me to guess. Okay.
About those clearance rates, though, can you explain how you make sure the numbers are accurate?
Well, we try to be extremely accurate. So we We pull the numbers, and then we compare the numbers as counted by our major crime unit. Then we cross-reference, look at our crime analysis unit, and say, what did you come up with? And it's far more complex than it sounds. And so even these numbers, as we look, before we finalize those, we go back, we reread the reports, we double-check the reporting criteria before we report our final numbers. So there's as much art as science in the development of these statistics. So what we share is always what we know at the time with the best information we have available, and we continue to dig to make sure we try to get it right. And we post it on the web so that there's a measure of transparency. So if we recognize we counted wrong, we explain why, and we'll post the right number. Please.
Chief, residents we talk to every day say more police on the streets, more police on the streets. Is that something that is a viable option for the department for this year? Will there be any help from the Department of Justice for funding, or is that something that will happen this year?
Well, that's, the citizens are not incorrect. I mean, Professor Nagin from CMU published a report for which he won the Stockholm Prize, the Pulitzer Prize, if you will, for criminal justice. And he found that the strongest correlation was the visible presence of police in the reduction of crimes rather than lengths of sentences or arrest rates. And so is that important? Yes, it is. Do these neighborhoods deserve and need more police presence? Yes, they do. Is it realistic to think we'll have those numbers to provide to them yet this year? No, it's not, because there's not because of we're not doing everything we can, simply the lag time in hiring. So we have pulled out all the stops this year to try to be able to hire as many police officers as humanly possible. So we are presently in a hiring cycle. We're going to be hiring a class, and it will be as large a class as we can train in March. We're going to run another one in the early fall, and we're going to start another one in the late fall, early winter. We're presently looking to try to find a training facility large enough to allow us to accommodate the training needs of these larger class, and to be able to, ideally at some point, be able to train 2 classes at the same time, which is what larger municipalities do. So this is an all hands on deck priority for us as a city, to make sure we get our strength up to where we need to be in order to be able to provide that visible presence. But in this coming year, we are going to be tight. It's simply a statistical fact. We're going to do everything we can to get people hired, but in the meantime, we're going to be looking very carefully at what we do, those things that my officers respond to, and I anticipate in the not too distant future having to talk to you about maybe some things we presently do that we're not going to be able to do in the coming year, because we're going to have to prioritize our visible presence. We're going to have to put our cops on the dots, as we say, in the problem-oriented policing realm, and make sure that our officers are using the data and being present in those areas where they're most needed. So it's going to be a little bit tough, but we're going to use our data so we're as effective as we possibly can be with each body that we have.
When you say hiring class, about how many would you say in that class?
Quite literally depends on the size of the room. Historically, we've taught 40. We're going to try to see if we can get a room big enough to accommodate 50, maybe 60. So we're literally working on it as we speak.
Okay, no more questions?
I got one more here, please.
Did you give a total number of homicides cleared for the year? You gave a percentage, I think.
Let me see what I. Let us look that up offline. We'll get that to you. I don't have it right here at my fingertips.
That is going to be made available on the website, correct?
Yes. Thank you. 2 things. 1, the data that we're looking at, we will post up on the web for you to look at. 2, don't forget we have the visualization where each month we update the preceding months. So I would expect by the end of this month you will be able to look at our website and see a complete violent crime analysis, and it will be searchable by neighborhood, by crime type, and those types of things. So our goal this year is to be highly transparent with our crime data. You're not going to have to wait to find out what crime looks like here in Pittsburgh. You'll be able to go right to the web to find that. That's all we got. Thank you.